Hey, what's up, everybody? Hopefully, everybody's event has been good so far. What's up, Scott? How are you, man?
Good. How are you doing? I almost wore an orange shirt just like that. I almost feel like I maybe should have worn it now that it would have been a lot funnier.
The universe was telling you something, right?
Yes, yes.
So I didn't get a chance to be on the whole event, but I'm sure that some of the questions that we were actually planning to answer today might have been covered. So first, let's start by just asking, what questions do you guys have for us to start with? Because I'll tell you kind of a little bit of the framework that Scott and I were thinking. Number one, we think that the use and the term AI is generally getting thrown around a lot, and it means something different, and we want to define that in this session. So we want to define the difference between AI and generative AI, help everyone understand that. We also want you guys to understand the difference between an LLM and an ML, which is machine learning, so that you can understand how these play different roles. Because every company in the world is claiming that they're AI right now. Every company in the world is changing their .com URLs to .ai, and we're here to set the record straight.
Yep, exactly. So I feel like maybe a little bit less now, but earlier in my career, we were telling people what the cloud was, and discovery calls would literally be based on what's the cloud again? Can you explain this to me? And it was like it's actually just our computers, not yours. Is as easy as it gets. I feel just to dumb it down. I feel like AI is kind of on the terms of it can think and process data faster than you can think and process data, and sometimes smarter, sometimes not. But that's what we're going to dive into a little bit here.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, so for the record, like this kind of stuff has actually been around a lot longer than we think it has. It's just the revolution of what's happened with GPT has made things a lot more relevant. But there's actually two use cases that I want to bring up that have actually happened directly on your phones and in your homes. Over the last 10 years, everyone knows what Alexa is and everyone knows what Siri is. And these are forms of AI. They are absolutely that. And it's infiltrated our homes. So for example, when Scott says like it allows you to be able to compute data at a much larger scale than we could as humans, that's absolutely true. So companies will use AI, and almost every company in the world will, to generate large sets of data, to analyze it, even large sets of information to analyze it and make sense of it at a much easier and faster pace. So for example, if you have an Alexa in your home and you ask Alexa a question, it has an entire knowledge base that it taps into, and that continues to grow and learns over time. And things that are learned over time, that is something that machine learning does, right? Where you don't actually have to feed it information and it can naturally learn on its own in the data set that you give it. So the more data you give it, the more it will learn.
And the difference between say a sophisticated workflow versus AI, where it just knows rules and then can act on its own based on those rules. So, for instance, if you, it seems silly now, but a novel idea that we had at my very first job in marketing was with healthcare software. And we thought, what if we suggest they buy these other healthcare coding books if they buy that healthcare coding book? And it was in 2008, the wildest successful campaign that we ever had. And now it's like, well, yeah, why wouldn't you just select other products? But with Amazon's catalog, just to go back to Amazon, of millions of products probably at this point, there's no way to build a workflow to tag all those things manually like I was doing back in the day. So now it can understand, all right, these are these types of categories, these are these types of objects, I'm going to suggest these ones, and take into consideration prior purchases. So another thing is we get a reminder from Alexa to buy coffee filters. Like, you have notification. What's notification? You go to the front door thinking it's a package, and she says, hey, I think it's time to buy coffee filters. And at one point, my wife dismissed it the very first time she heard it, and then went to go make coffee, and literally we had 5 left. And we were like, wow, that is pretty amazing. So those are just some real life examples. But in the work world, I think most of us think of, like the Reggie AI presentation that was just before us, we think of it in terms of generative AI, but there are a lot more forms of it than generative AI and making, a funny version of a political person's headshot or something like that. Those are going around. So there are more uses, and it is more practical in this, B2B sales and marketing setting.
Yeah, one of the most creative use cases that I have seen with just generative AI in general, and this is, by the way, very real. They're actually trying to put this into production right now. But there was a gentleman who created a Mortal Kombat game. If you're not familiar with that game, just do a little Google, but you probably know this. Finish him, right? Anyway, so he created this Mortal Kombat game of all these political and celebrity people. So like Biden, Trump, like Kim Kardashian, John Cena, like you name it, right? They were in this Mortal Kombat game. And you'd think that using generative AI, like couple of passes, if anyone's ever used Mid-Journey, it's fantastic, but you typically have to you really have to massage it as a human being a lot until it gets to the point where you want it, right? And I was absolutely blown away by this game. Like it's gone viral now to the point where they're actually trying to get a game company to create this version of Mortal Kombat because it's so good. And it really was well done. Like they have their own finisher moves. It was fantastic. Go Google it. You'll love that. But that's one of the most creative use cases that I've ever seen in this little revolution, right, that we're having with AI happen when it comes to like visuals and how we can actually use it from a design perspective. It's going to impact all aspects of marketing, for the record. Here you have 2 CMOs, and it absolutely will impact just about every aspect. So you've probably heard people say this, but if you're not using forms of AI to help you be more efficient in your job, you need to. That's the easiest way for people to say that to you, is you need to be using it.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be even a skill set. Like I'm Eloqua Marketo, HubSpot certified, and Salesforce certified, all that. Well, you're going to have some kind of knowledge of how to use AI, because though it will take some of the more mundane work off of your plate, you're still going to have to use it to your advantage. So, think of it in terms of 2 people show up to do a landscaping job. One shows up with a bobcat to dig a hole and plant a few trees, and someone shows up with a shovel. I'm just going to tell the guy with the shovel or the gal with the shovel to go away. It's going to be the same type of thing. You need to be able to be proficient at prompts, be proficient at knowing what's available and what's out there, because it will enable you to not only do more work faster, it will enable you to be better at that work. When I, just to have some humility here, my first director of marketing job, I took it, and you kind of just say you can do everything, but I have these specialties. Well, at the time, I hadn't really done any PR. And the first day, the first email I get is the president goes, "Hey, we're launching a new product. I need you to write a press release for this." And I literally panicked and was like, I've never written a press release before in my life. So I found the competitor that had the closest product announcement of that product and then just rewrote it for us. Well, now you could just have AI write a draft for you, and then you perfect it, and it's probably going to be pretty good or pretty close to what you need to have. And then you could even say optimize this for SEO, so on and so forth. So I wouldn't be afraid of it. I wouldn't think that it's going to take over. I think it's more so going to be a skill set, or is even starting to be a skill set, that the top performers on any team are going to have.
So let's talk about how we can align people around it, because I think that's something big. By the way, did we answer everyone's questions on like what AI is, what generative AI is? For example, maybe we didn't answer what an LLM is, but that's just a large language model. That is what ChatGPT really is a large language model. And then an ML is machine learning. So those are the kind of the big areas that we wanted to just make sure everyone had clear understanding of. So hopefully that is the case. And unfortunately, we can't. I don't know how to engage in the chat. I don't know how to do that.
I can see the questions come across, so we'll have to answer them verbally, which is fine. But I see them coming across.
So Derek, you asked which AI did he use to make that Mortal Kombat game, and I honestly, truthfully don't know. I know he used Midjourney as part of it, but you can't. I don't think you can make like a video game. So obviously, he probably took the visual aspects of those, used an animator, used developers and things like that, and then that ultimately turned into the game. So, but it is pretty cool. There's a bunch of YouTube videos out there with it, so go check it out. So I think one of the big things for me is how to align your teams, right? And for me, so I've got 2 people on my team right now who are incredible writers, right? They're just like probably 2 of the best that I've ever met. And for the last maybe 12 months, even before ChatGPT came out, I've been talking to them about leveraging different types of writing styles and even leveraging tools like Reggie and Lavender and things like that help you kind of like build a structure of your copy. And they've been very reluctant to do it. They haven't wanted to do it for the same reason that many people out there don't want to, right? They're afraid that it's going to lose its human feel. And so how I did this, by the way, if you're a leader out there, I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but this is what worked for me. I gave them a couple of tasks and I said, can you do the following things? We need the following blogs written. So they put together some framework on those blogs, and I did the same thing in ChatGPT. So I gave it some prompts, and then I wrote like 4 blogs before they could write 2. And I just put it in front of them, and I said, all right, here's the blogs. I've made 3 different passes at these blogs in ChatGPT. Here's what they look like. They're SEO friendly. Here's the 2 that you wrote, and I want you to compare them, okay? And honestly, the ChatGPT stuff, it needed a lot of human intervention. It needed help with it, right? And they knew that. But I feel like one of the best ways to get your team members to know how to use AI, especially the tools that are out there, is to actually put it in front of them and you yourself try to use it. Because I think way too often, and we know this, like you see all the time on LinkedIn now, 1 million people talking about how to do all the right prompts for ChatGPT. And that's what the gentleman at Reggie AI was alluding to, is like, you don't have to be a prompt wizard to figure this stuff out. But a lot of these new AI tools, you kind of do. And then the only way that you're going to be able to really get to know them, and you can't ask your team to go use these AI tools if you yourself as a leader are not willing to dive deep into it with them.
Yep. And when you talk about how a marketer should use it, I think that there's still a higher level of comfort on using that, because there's time to do stuff, that you have time to edit the copy. You're planning weeks or months in advance, and you can make any corrections you want and produce a lot more. I think because marketing success is directly tied to sales success, they may be trying to use it on the fly. And I think that that's where some of the risks and guardrails need to be put up a little bit more on how and when and in what form it gets used there. So some sales platforms have used it in terms of they just allow certain drop downs to be used for the prompts to control a little bit more, or maybe you don't yet use it to completely handle a response, but it can give you quick responses to some basic stuff. So I don't know if any of you have watched South Park, but there's a South Park episode where the boys start using ChatGPT to handle all the text messages from their girlfriends. And, you get to days later and it's still pretty controllable. You get to weeks later and all of a sudden they're like, these elaborate stories and trips and things have been planned and conversed about, and they're clueless. They're in basically a lot of hot water. So on the sales side, that can still happen too. So I would say that if you use it more in the controlled way right now. So like Lavender is a great example where it will like tell you where you need to make some corrections. These sentences are too long. You're using these types of phrases. And that's a really good use case to enable a sales team, or if you're making the email scripts or email templates for your sales team, work with them with the tools that you're already perfecting on the marketing side to say, hey, we can do this, we can do that. We should adapt these suggestions to improve results overall, and not just let it completely take over, unless there are some maybe unique scenarios in which that can be applied, because you can get into trouble with that. And if you're at a publicly traded company, there's a large computer company that makes computers that's a customer of ours, and we have in our Kronologic email builder the OpenAI plugin to be able to make your emails. Well, when we demoed it to her, she started to type in this computer model versus the Apple blah, blah, blah. And it gave an output and a pretty well written short email. And she said, this is amazing. This is better than what I would have written. And she was the VP of sales. And then she followed that immediately by, but I can't use this. And we were like, wait, you don't want us to turn this feature on for you? You just said this is amazing. She goes, I don't know where this information was sourced. I don't know how accurate it is. And there's too many cases in which ChatGPT will make things up to fit an argument. And we could get into a lot of trouble if it prompts something that a junior level rep wouldn't understand if it's accurate, though someone at her level does understand if it's accurate. And so there's some situations that you should still be leery of and not just go full blown all out. I'm on the AI train. Let's go. Let's use it for this and that and this. And then all of a sudden you're in this world where you're having to play firefighter instead of just being more efficient. So I would say kind of adapt it with your teams in a more controlled version and see what works, what doesn't, so you can adjust and pivot quickly.
Yeah, and I think one of the hardest part for us as humans is actually defining something that's new and creating it, right? So like putting it on paper. It's one of the hardest things that our brains struggle with. This is why there's writer's block. This is why designers have to like do something different and get their mind off of things to design well. It's the hardest thing, right? It's the first initial idea. And so I always say to people on my team, like, look, why don't you go use ChatGPT to come up with a bunch of ideas, and then you make those ideas your own, right? And it helps get rid of all that, because you can spend hours and hours and hours trying to brainstorm on creative ideas, and ChatGPT can give you some right out of the gates. So that's also a big area that I think it helps make us be more efficient, where we can't compute the data that it has at its fingertips, and it can do it at a much faster pace. So it can give you frameworks and ideas much faster than anything else.
Yeah. So that goes to Scott Marker's question here of, I get ChatGPT and the versions of like creating copy, I think there's two things. One, another use case is when AI is used to enhance natural language processing, which is what our platform does at Kronologic. We'll read a response from someone if we suggest a meeting time to them, because that's what we do is we schedule meetings. So if they say, Tuesday at 1 works better, it can interpret that, understand it, and then update the invite automatically. Lots of different softwares are using NLPs in the software behind the scenes. But to your point, James, in order to use it in different ways, I think it's using the generative AI in more than just the copywriting sense. So like you said, give me 10 ideas for fun things to do at an event booth, or even better yet, give you a framework. I want to create a customer newsletter for this software that focuses on marketers or IT engineers who face these problems, and make it in this tone with this length, and then it'll give you a whole plan. and you can follow that, adjust it, adapt it. And then if you just keep that string going, you can say, write me the first 25 topics or 24 topics to give you your 6 months worth of weekly newsletters. And then you can take those, adapt them, and then just tell it to write those. And that's where your prompt writing really needs to be honed in, when it actually starts to write them. But giving yourself some frameworks on new projects, ideas, or even to improve something that you already have, use it as a person. Like, what if I were to ask someone who's an expert in something that I'm not an expert in, how do you do this? Or how do you make this better? And it can actually provide you at least a starting point to go down that road. So maybe how you use the ChatGPT or any generative AI, it doesn't matter which one it is really. That is the different versions that it can do, of different versions of how to use it.
I think a use case that I really like right now, that I'm actually using it a lot for, are building like video story scripts.
Oh,
which take, by the way, a ton of time to do.
yeah.
And it gives some pretty good ones, like, and really funny ones. I've like taught it about Flip, and it's given us some really good video scripts. Now, I will say I'm not a huge fan of literally any video AI tool right now. Like, I think they all suck. Sorry if there was anybody on here that does that, but they're bad. Okay, so but writing the scripts is pretty good. So Scott, that's another area. I know we only have about 9 minutes left, and one big area that Scott and I felt pretty strongly to talk about was, we mentioned it, but was some of the governance that's happening or doesn't happen, and the ethics that don't happen or do happen with AI. So Scott, if you don't mind, I'm going to start us off. I wrote this down. There's really 4 big areas that I think that we should be talking a lot more about with the challenges of generative AI and the ethical considerations. Okay. One of them is bias. Okay. So this is whatever you train it on, that's what it's going to learn. And that's what it's going to give you as an output. So you have to make sure that you don't have bias in your output. Meaning, like, if you're talking about the love that you have about Flip, meaning we're Flip, then it's going to continue to love about Flip. You have to teach it about the other people out there, right? So you can't have just extreme bias with it. And then the second one is privacy. So our use of PII data and things like that, I think it's going to be governed a lot more than it ever has been. I know from our perspective, we take this very, very seriously at Flip, because we can handle PII data, and we do have our own proprietary AI, and we can integrate within ChatGPT, and we do. But the difference is like, we have specific governance and ethical things that we put in our contracts on how we're going to handle PII data, so that it is governed in such a way that no one has to worry about their payment information being shared or teaching it, for example, anything like that. Third one, accountability, right? Whoever's responsible when the AI makes a mistake, then who takes accountability for that? So let's say you're using it in a chat bot on your website, right? Shout out to Signals. So let's say you're using it in a chat bot on your website. What happens if it actually feeds a customer the wrong information, gives them a pricing that's wrong, or something like that? Who's responsible for that? So there's accountability. And then the fourth one is transparency. Ensuring that AI decisions can be understood by humans. I think that's the biggest thing. And that's why we started off talking about, here's the difference between when somebody says AI and somebody says, generative AI. This is what it means. What are your thoughts on that, Scott?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the tools out there don't allow for that. Like, when you use a LinkedIn Navigator prompt, there's or search, I should say. You can say, is not this, is not that, is not this, does not contain this. Even in reports, you can do that for your data, but there's not a lot of that's incorporated into those tools today. Some of them probably do have them, but that is super important to program the not. So Meredith said modeling to the opposite. That's definitely important. like the computer manufacturer I talked about, they weren't even willing to give it a shot because of that exact same reason. So, and if you're a smaller company, probably not as big of an issue. If you're a publicly traded company, oof, you better like hold on to your seat before you start to like use it in mass, because the last thing you want is an email from the legal team because something got reported and you didn't even know about it. So that it's going to be more and more important as these tools start to develop and get baked into these solutions. So even as a solution provider, those are things that we're thinking about as our engineering team enhances that capability.
And as you work with different AI companies, I think the most important thing you can do is ask them explicitly those questions, right? Like, how are you using personal data? How are you training the AI? And how is the information that you're giving it how does it not have bias in it, right? Like, asking these questions to vendors, I think are important. And it is the responsibility of every vendor who claims their AI to know the answers. And if they don't know the answers, you need to run far. Because if they don't have the governance figured out, then you're going to be responsible for using it as a tool. So I think that's an important thing to remember.
Yeah. I think that's a solid note to conclude on, is, have some caution, know what your situation is, know what type of company you are, and what are the consequences of having it take over and say something that it shouldn't. Make sure you pay attention to that and talk to your teams, not just your marketing team, but other teams if you're a leader and want to use it at scale. Okay.
Any other questions before we end, Jenny? You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys answered the one already from Scott, who was asking if you guys knew of any other use cases for ChatGPT outside of written content.
Yeah, that's why we mentioned the video stuff. Like, that's one of my favorite places to use it. I also really like using it in our podcast. Sometimes I don't like keeping our podcast like the same every single episode, so I'll have it like feed me new questions. My team came up with this question of like asking people that were on, like, what if you could get a tattoo of a brand, of any brand, what would it be and why? And so like we've been weaving that in. It helped us come up with like a segment on the show called FMK, where we ask people like, what's sexy, what would you marry in marketing or e-commerce, and what needed to be killed like yesterday. So I think it can also help you draft questions for things that you use in other areas, including research questions, customer questions. So if you have customer calls, I think you can use it to give you prompts and different questions to derive different types of insight and market research as well.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, we are so glad you guys were able to join us today. And thank you very much. And we'll go ahead and let you go.
Bye.